When it's come to organizing, we are all guilty of leaving cords and cables laying around. And that's where these fabric cord keepers come in handy. Even with organizing and all, I lose stuff very easily and then it takes me hours to find it. If that sounds familiar to you, you may like this added detail to this project. It's a small fabric hoop and you can then hang this somewhere you can clearly see. Now let's start with fabric measurements so you can make these simple fabric cord keepers. You'll need a fabric piece measuring 3 by 5 inches, and as we need 2 pieces for the both sides, you'll need another fabric measuring the same. I'm using fusible fleece for this project to give some steadiness and cut 2 interface pieces measuring half an inch smaller than the fabric pieces, 2.5 by 4.5 inches. As I'm using Velcro to secure the cord, I cut 2 Velcro pieces like this, and you can also use snaps if you like. Now this other part is optional. I cut a small fabric piece measuring 1.5 by 3 inches to work as a small hoop. Skip this part if you think you don't need that. The next step is to make the smaller fabric piece into a strap, and for that, lay flat the wrong side of the fabric lengthwise and then fold the 2 ends to meet each other at the center line. Then fold it in half and use a pin to keep the fold. Pressing the fabric with an iron will be easier, but since this is a small fabric piece, I'm just gonna hand press it. Now sew along the open end closer to the margin. Remove the pin and hold the fold in place using your hand while sewing. Remember to do a little back stitch at the beginning and then just sew straight closer to the open margin. Do a little back stitch at the end and trim all threads. Now the fabric strap is ready, and let's keep it aside for a moment. To fuse the interface to the fabric, place the shiny side of the interface facing the wrong side of the fabric. As you can see, I cut my interface pieces a little smaller than the fabric. Also, just eyeball whether your interface layers are positioned at the center of the fabric so it has equal spaces around all 4 sides. Now turn over to the fabric side and press it to fuse the fabric to the interface. I usually keep the iron a few seconds in one place and then move on to the other. Even though I use 2 interface layers, you can also use only 1 layer. It's up to you and how steady you need the cord keeper to be. At this point, both layers are nicely fused, and let's start assembling. Now place one fabric layer on top of the other. The important thing is the right sides of the 2 fabrics need to face each other. Also make sure they are aligned as well. Then take the small fabric strap and fold it in half. Now place it in between the 2 fabric layers in a shape of the letter V. As we roll the cord along the longer side of the fabric, you'll need to place the fabric hoop on either one of the 2 short sides, and it has to be placed in the middle for hanging. I also like to leave a little bit of strap hanging outwards, just to make sure everything's gonna attach properly while sewing. Now use a pin or a clip to keep the fabric hoop in place. You can also pin the 2 fabric layers together to keep everything in place. Since this is a small fabric area, you might not need a lot of pins. Now mark about 2 inches of space along the longer side of the fabric to turn right side out at the end. You can just remind yourself to keep the space, but I usually mark those 2 points just to make sure where to start and stop. Now starting from one of the points, start to sew around till you reach the other mark point. This time I'm leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and remember to backstitch at the beginning to secure your stitches. Whenever you are reaching a corner, stop the sewing and raise the foot. Then pivot and lower the foot again. After that, you can start to sew straight again. The best thing about sewing your own stuff is you can then customize things as you like. Even here, I added a fabric hoop because I know it'll be useful to me. You may think that's not you and you can then totally skip it. It allows you to do things in your own way. When you reach the other marked point, do a little back stitch to end the sewing. Finally, trim all threads. Now before turning the right side out, we need to trim off all 4 corners. Starting from one of the corners, trim off small triangular shapes like I do and be extra careful not to damage any of the stitches. With that done, it's time to turn the right side out using the opening we left. Since this is a small fabric area and it has become steady with the interface, be gentle when you turn right side out. Otherwise, you might damage the stitches at the 2 ends of the opening. Use a small rod like this wooden rod to poke out the corners, and again don't poke too hard so you'll damage the fabric or stitches. As you can see, the fabric hoop turned out okay, and our next step is to enclose the opening we left. But before that, using your hands, try to press the seams at the opening towards the inside. This will make things easier when sewing. Then you can give it a proper press using an iron to make everything nice and flat, and also make sure to tuck in the seams at the opening we left. Now starting from one point, I'm going to top stitch all the way around. Since we left a 1/4 inch seam allowance in the previous step, you'll definitely need to leave a less than a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this step. As always, do a little back stitch at the beginning. To enclose the opening we left earlier, make sure to sew closer to the margin. These kind of projects are a great way to use up your fabric scraps, and you can use some of your old clothing as well. I mean, we all know sewing only one of these cord keepers will never gonna be enough. So make a whole bunch for your entire family and friends. Do a little back stitch when you reach the end, and finally trim all threads. Now it's time to sew 2 pieces of Velcro. Lay flat one side of the cord keeper and place one Velcro on the top end of that side like this. You're going to sew it around later. Now turn over to the other side and place the other Velcro on the bottom end of that side. We are also going to sew this later. Just remember how you need to position both pieces in order to make this cord keeper to work. Now let's start sewing one by one. Place the Velcro in place, and while holding that to the fabric, start to sew it around. Velcro can be a little tricky for my basic sewing machine, so I'm going to go really slow. I don't want my threads to be jammed or anything like that. Since this is a small area, you'll need to be extra careful. I have seen many people using snaps instead of Velcro, but I don't have those or any equipments that need to attach snaps. Maybe I'll learn how to do that later and I'll share that with you. Now let me remind you, even with the Velcro, you'll need to start and finish by doing a little backstitch. Finally, trim all threads. As you are done with the first one, start to sew the second Velcro piece at the other side. Place the Velcro at the bottom end of that side and sew it to the fabric while holding it in place. The fabric measurements for this cord keeper will work just fine for small cords and cables. But if you need to use one for a laptop charger or for something bigger, adjust the measurements according to its size. At this point, we are done sewing both Velcro pieces and you can trim all threads. Now it's time to see our cord keeper at work. Make a few of these and then you will be able to keep your cables, cords or any wires without tangling with each other. I would like to know your thoughts on the hanging feature we added to this cord keeper. So please let me know what you think of it. I think it's such a cute organizing tool and I can even use this for my measuring tape. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you like this video and I hope you'll give it a try. Thank you all for watching and I'll join you in the next one.